I'm worried a lot because they live in a conflict area, can't get medication, can't get to school.
Now it's very long time.
It's been 18 years since Abdurazak Nur Hassin last saw his brother Muhammad Ali back home in Eritrea.
So you are very suffering from these things.
He was overjoyed when he thought that was going to change. His brother's family were granted humanitarian visas in March last year and couldn't wait to settle in Australia. They'd fled political persecution and have been living in this one-bedroom home in Sudan for 3 years.
He's so happy at the time. He thinks he's coming maybe in the 3 months or 4 months. He thought he's going to flee to Australia.
But more than a year on, the brothers are still waiting to be reunited. Muhammad Ali is one of thousands of refugees who are currently in limbo, locked out of Australia due to the government's border restrictions. Unlike Australian citizens and permanent residents, humanitarian visa holders can be effectively blocked from entering the country under the travel ban. That's because they're not yet permanent residents. They have to arrive in the country first.
It is very hard life here, very hard life. No security, no school for my children. I am afraid for my children because of the ethnic war.
Stressful.
Abdurazak has applied for a travel exemption on behalf of his brother 3 times. All were rejected with no explanation. Salal Sultan's brother also faces an uncertain future. Khalil and his family escaped religious persecution in Iraq and have lived in Jordan for 4 years. They were granted humanitarian visas last year, but are still waiting for the green light to come to Australia.
They are living in terrible conditions. The money they have is very little and it's almost all gone.
The family is fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and they're pleading with the Australian government to be let in.
Our life is miserable. We think about our children's future more than our own. Our future hangs in the balance.
There are currently about 8,000 refugees with humanitarian visas stranded overseas. That's doubled since September last year. And refugee advocates say that's putting more vulnerable lives at risk.
It's a great concern that people who were judged by the Australian government to be at the greatest need of humanitarian settlement have been stuck in very difficult circumstances in countries of asylum for more than a year in quite a number of cases.
Since border restrictions took effect, just 708 refugees have been allowed to enter Australia. That's only 1% of the 53,000 people granted travel exemptions overall. The Australian Border Force says most exemptions have been for those providing a critical skill. But advocates say it's not fair that Hollywood actors, pop stars and international athletes have also been given permission to enter the country.
A refugee, who's been selected to resettle in Australia because of their humanitarian need is probably in greater need of entering Australia than a film star coming on a holiday or a tennis star coming for a tournament.
The Refugee Council is calling on the government to grant more exemptions to refugees.
If 50 or 100 refugees per week were given the opportunity to come to Australia, it would make a great difference.
The Home Affairs Minister, Karen Andrews, said she was unavailable for interview. But in a statement, the department said Australia's travel restrictions must be balanced against the government's intent in protecting the health of the Australian community.
With refugee arrivals grinding to a halt, there's been little work for resettlement organisations, putting many of them under financial strain. Some were able to hang on last year due to JobKeeper, but with that lifeline gone, many are now struggling to survive.
Hello. How are you?
One of Australia's largest resettlement organisations, Settlement Services International, was recently forced to cut 50 staff.
If we don't have a date for borders reopening, it's really difficult to maintain the infrastructure for any organisation.
When border restrictions are lifted, the not-for-profit organisation fears it will be difficult to cope with the influx of refugees.
We're losing expertise, we're losing skills. How do we scale up again when the borders reopen?
Which all adds to the stress for people who've been recognised as refugees but who are locked out.
There is no safety for my children.
If you give to someone a humanitarian visa, you should look after him.